Good morning in early June. Our June 1st is everybody else's May 1st because May 1st is when you plant your gardens. If we plant our gardens on May 1st, they die because it's still winter. Because we are at 5,800 feet and high winds and lots of storms. In the last 15 days, we've had 14 days of rain, which is unheard of in our climate. But it's happening, and that's fantastic, and I want to talk about it. You can see these garden plots here. These garden plots were tilled. I teach the principle of no-till, and I teach the principle of context. So let's talk about the context of why I would till up these small garden plots. We have had the wettest spring in history, and this was the only dry place that we have to plant, and where I normally put my garden is a swamp. Right now there's standing water there. We've stuck our shovel in to do a shovel test. The soil is very stinky, it's very anaerobic. If we planted there, nothing would grow. But we had this area over here on the west side of our property, inside the deer fence where it's protected. And as we turn around this way, you can get context of where we are on the property. You can see the Wallapini greenhouse there, and our magnificent big tree where the kestrel lives. And you can see Apricot Cottage there, and the motorhome where my students live, and our cover crop field. So we needed to get crops in because our number one priority is we are feeding 20 people 80% of our food supply. And we have a lot of outside crops that we grow each year. We try to grow flowers, melons, tomatoes, beans, squash, onions, garlic, lettuce, peppers, eggplants, potatoes, and I don't even know what else, but a lot of things. And in the world of squash, we have 7 or 8 varieties. In the world of potatoes, we have 11 varieties. So there's a lot of fun things that we're growing. Without tilling this up, we would have been planting in ground that looked like this. And it simply wouldn't have worked because we couldn't have tilled it. We couldn't have weeded it out and cleaned up the weeds and kept on top of the weeds for this kind of a planting. Now, usually we don't till, and we use tarps to cover the soil. And when the soil is dry and the weeds are and the other plants are growing, we can use the idea of a roller crimper, and we can knock down the plants. And it simply wasn't working this year because of the super wet weather. So we decided to go ahead and till because this soil was dry, and we got all these 3 gardens planted in one day. I've got 4 full-time students, and we had a 5th one here for 2 weeks. And so this is the field where the potatoes are. We have 2 rows of each variety, and then we put in, I think, 4 rows of my favorite variety, which is called Valerie. Not my favorite for any other reason other than they do very well in our climate. They produce a lot of food here in our climate, and they store very well in our in the root cellar here. So they have a long shelf life. And we've tried a new variety this year called Irish Cobbler. It's not new to me, but it's new to this climate, me growing it in this climate. It's a good potato, and I wanted to see how it would do here. So again, the reason we tilled is so that we could grow food, and we were unprepared for the super wet weather. Otherwise, we could have used the feedlot, but the feedlot is a swamp, and we till that every year anyway, because the primary purpose is that's where cattle live in the wintertime, where we feed them hay, because they need a place to live. And so that's where they live for the winter. and it works very well. But this year we couldn't get it in there, so we used this piece. And mostly what we're growing are potatoes, and so it takes a lot of digging to grow the potatoes. And we were not building soil in the feedlot ever, because every winter it's the place where the cattle live. So we're not going to have a great functioning soil there. And so the secondary purpose of that ground would be to grow something in the summertime. I don't know if it's going to dry up enough to be able to plant there this year. So there's a little bit of context on why we tilled these fields, but I just wanted to get some footage of this because as the potatoes come up, these will be changing over the years. So this is about half the size of the land where the feedlot is. So we only got half of our crops in. And so I'm hoping to be creative and figure out how to get the rest of them in. But we may just have a small garden this year. Hopefully this helps you to understand context when it comes to soil health and building aggregates and porospheres and the functioning soils and not tilling. But sometimes we have to till, otherwise we starve to death.